All right, I'm on. Okay, I am an alcoholic. My name is Steve. Thank you for that nice introduction, Stephen. You have added a great deal to that Boca men's meeting that we go to on a regular basis. So I am an alcoholic. My name is Steve, and my sobriety date is January the 19th, 1973. Uh, but actually, my alcoholism goes back beyond that. And because this is a speaker meeting, he wants the long version. I'm going to go back all the way to my childhood. And that isn't to say that mom and dad were pouring drinks down my throat, but they had a definite effect on my alcohol and alcoholism. I grew up in an alcoholic home. And as a youngster, it wasn't just an alcoholic home, it was a violent home. A lot of discord. My father was a guy who emigrated to this country, and at the age of 12, he had to quit school and go to work full time in the construction trade in New York. And at the time that he went to work full time as a steam fitter, the work week was 6 10s. It was a 60-hour work week at 12 years old. And as a consequence of that, he was a man of few words. If he wanted your attention, he could usually get it with a short left. And that's what it was like. And my mother, she was a really stone cold alcoholic. In her lifetime, she had some 15 or 17 shock treatments, which is a common thing that they did back in the day. And they'd be downstairs and they'd be fighting, and I wanted to protect my mother, but I'm just a little boy and I couldn't. So my remedy to that was at the age of 13, I started climbing out the window and running the streets with the older do-nothings that were up at the park already. And I learned three things when I entered that fraternity. I learned how to drink, I learned how to fight, and I learned how to steal. And that was pretty much going to be my resume right up until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. So at about the age of, well, I got in trouble in high school for drinking a couple of times. It was nothing terrible, but I was already drinking pretty steady at the age of 15. At the age of 17, I graduated high school at 17. And I thought I was going to have the greatest summer ever. Except Little John said to me, "You're going to have the greatest 2 weeks ever, because after 2 weeks, if you're not working full time and contributing here, you're not going to be living here anymore." And I knew he was not one of those comic guys. You could take him at his word. So my 2 weeks came up. I didn't do anything to look for a job. He woke me at 4:30 one morning after 2 weeks and said, "Get up, you're going to work with me." And my job, my career, I should say, as a steam fitter began at 17. And he also informed me around that time that, we have rules in this house. I want you home at 11 o'clock. Well, at that age, at 17 years old, there were a lot of days I was just getting up and going out at 10 o'clock at night. The night was just beginning. So that was my cue to move, which is what I did. So where am I going to go? What am I going to do? So I was working in Manhattan most of the time. So I figured, geez, I might as well get a place in Manhattan. It seemed a very logical, sensible thing to do. So I ended up getting a plush apartment on the west side of Manhattan in what was called at that time Hell's Kitchen. And back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and early 80s, Hell's Kitchen was more fun than Disney World. At least we called it fun. The local police called it crime. We did a lot of drinking, we did a lot of fighting, and we did a lot of stealing. We were doing robberies, hijackings, whatever we could get away with. And we were having a grand old time. We really were. It was a lot of fun. It was a dangerous place to be. And this luxury apartment I was in, I think it was $42 a month. It was an old turn of the century 4-story walk up with a bathroom at each end of the hall. So it really wasn't, it was not Park Avenue, I can tell you that. But it was good enough for me because all I did was flop in there once in a while and catch some sleep, get up, go to work for a while. And it was like that. But the whole working thing didn't last all that long because I was making more money at night than I was going to work on the job. So, simple arithmetic encouraged me to give that up. And in between there, I wasn't around much too long. At 19, I got in a jackpot. And I was taken to a mental institution by way of a straitjacket. And I was there for observation. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. How did this happen to me? I mean, because I was blackout drinking back when I was 13, 14 years old. I thought everybody blacked out when they drank sometimes. I didn't know that that was a serious symptom of alcoholism. Nor did I much care, to tell you the truth, at that age. So I went to my first checkup for a couple of days. I don't know if it was 3 or 4 days. And I managed to give them all the right answers. And they let me go. And I went right back to what I was doing. Life was one great big joke to me. So in between there, I had been dating a girl out on Long Island where I grew up from when we were kids. And I took her hostage when I was 20. And there were some really insane times there in the beginning of the marriage, but she hung in there. And I'll get to one part of it later. It involves the 9th step, making amends. And I know when we make amends, it's for the other person. I understand this, but I'll get to that a little bit later. But I continued to keep my plush apartment in Manhattan. And I would stay there a few nights a week, go home on the weekend, whatever. And this went on for a number of years, and I was getting away with it. She tolerated it. So as we're going along, the kiddies come along, and a lot of my defects of character was really starting to show themselves. Aside from being a blackout drinker, I was a violent drinker. A couple of my friends said to me one time, I think you've had more fights than a lot of pros that are around today. And that might be true because it seems like anytime we went out, I would get in a hookup. And, a lot of that wasn't because I wanted to demonstrate what a tough guy I was. A lot of that was because I would get so angry. I didn't know what to do with the anger. But it always seemed to help if I got in a fight. If I could hit you and you could hit me, somehow, some of that I would decompress. And I knew it was an unhealthy thing to be doing, but I did it anyway. So the things at home weren't getting any better, that's for sure. So and we used to go on, the guys, the crew, which is what we were a crew. If we made a really good score, we would go on vacation somewhere. So we would go out to California, we'd go to Las Vegas, we'd come down here to Florida, spend all that illicitly gotten money, have a good time for a week or so, and then go back to New York and pick up right where we left off. So I come home from one of these benders, and it's around Christmas time, and I go home, and I don't know how I'm going to be received, but she was pretty good about it. And at the time, we had a 3-year-old, and it was tree decorating time. So when I got there, it was tinsel time. And my ex-wife is putting the tinsel on there one at a time, very strategically placed. And I started doing that, but then it started to get on my nerves. One at a time. I got a fistful of this stuff. So I started throwing it on. She got upset. I was still half hungover. We got in an argument. One thing led to another. I picked up the tree and I shoved it out the window. And with that, my little 3-year-old came up from behind. And with her little fist, she's beating me on the back of my legs. And she's saying, "Why don't you go away and leave me and my mommy alone?" And I obliged. I just turned around and left back into the city, pick up where I left off. And that's how things were going for a long time, except my drinking was increasing. The amount of violence that was going on in the kitchen was getting worse and worse. And I used to get my load on sometimes, and I developed an alcohol habit. I don't know where this came from. I don't know why it came from. But I would get my load on, and I would go up to Boston. And I didn't know anybody in Boston. I had no family, no friends, no reason to be in Boston. And I would end up on the same bench in the same park. And this started to happen a lot. Then at the age of 22, I get nailed again for another trip into the puzzle factory. They got to take a good long look at me. And it sort of got my attention, but I figured, I dodged this bullet once before, I can do it again. So I razzle-dazzled them. Evidently, I told them all the right answers because they let me go again. And once again, the denial. These were all signposts. God was sending me messages. And I would just blow right by them. So to make a long story short, I'm 25 now. And I get bagged for another trip into Central Islip State Hospital. And this time I was concerned. This is becoming repetitive. What's wrong here? And I remember going up to the nurse at the end of the room, the day room. She sat behind an iron cage. And I just wanted to get out of there. And I went to her and I said, I think somebody's made a terrible mistake. I don't belong here. And she looked me dead in the eye and she said to me, "Sweetie, I was here last night when they brought you in. And you belong." Oh boy, this isn't good. So now that I'm sitting there in the day room on day 2 or 3, I don't remember, and I'm coloring. I'm 25 years old. I'm in a mental institution and I'm coloring, being very careful to stay in the lines. Now my eye starts getting to me again because I don't have a black crayon. I only have 4 crayons. So all of my animals, all of my cars, all of my trees, everything had to be brown. And this was really starting to make me angry. And at one point, I thought I should just get up and turn the table over, make a ruckus, get some attention around here. But then I realized that the tables, they're sunk in. You can't turn them over. And then I sat back down and I had a chat with myself. And I said, Steve, you're 25. In a normal life expectancy, you could live another 50 years. Is this what you're going to do for 50 years? You're going to color? Make little leather belts? I said, oh no, man. No, I have to get out of here one more time. I got to do this. And in that particular session, that visit, they were talking about maybe what I needed was shock treatment. Well, I knew what shock treatments did to you because they did them to my mom. And they basically, by my estimation, they turned her in, by the time she got home, she was a turnip for about a month before she could really clear up. And I had no desire to be a turnip. So I did manage to get out of there that time. And in between, I missed a part. Back when I was 19 and I went to the first cracker factory, by then my mother was programmed. And she begged me to go to a meeting. So I did. I didn't hear a damn thing. And the guy who took me, when he brought me home, the only thing I remember saying to him was, look, do us both a favor, lose my phone number. So that was it. Now here I am. I'm 25. I got out of there. And I didn't want to go back to the kitchen. There was a lot of heat starting to get applied to us. And I had no desire, because in between I'd been, aside from the nut houses, the lockups. I'd been in a lot of lockups for all pest. I was a neighborhood pest. And after a couple of days, maybe 30 days, whatever, I'd get out, they'd let me back out, and off I'd go. So when I didn't go back to the kitchen, I decided I'm just going to live in the street till I figure this out. So now my new tenancy was the New York City subway system. And I turned into what you frequently see and always have in New York. I was just a young bum, wandering aimlessly around, riding the rails, panhandling for a living. And one day, I'm panhandling. And when you're in a condition like that, you're not looking in the eye of too many people. You're broken. And I panhandle this guy, ask him if he's got a little change. And he says to me, Steve, what are you doing? And at that point, I look up and it's one of my brothers. He said, what are you doing? I said, I need a little money. I want to get something to drink. So he says, you're killing mom and dad. I said, what are you talking about? I'm killing mom and dad. I haven't talked to either one of them in a couple of years. And you see, in my mind, I was being noble by keeping my problems away from everybody. I had no contact with family, friends, old acquaintances. That was just a thing of the past. So right around that same time, I start hitting a few meetings, AA meetings. I still had a memory. And I'm really not hearing anything. I knew what you were supposed to be doing down there, but I could not do that. I could not separate myself from a drink for an entire day. I just couldn't do it. And what I'm drinking at the time is all that rat gut, cheap wine, anything that was, 50, 60 cents a pint, Mad Dog, Ripple, all of that crap. And I'm getting sick because I'm living outdoors for a long time. So my journeys to Boston continued. And I wake up, wrapping it up now to the last of my adventures. I wake up in Boston on the same bench for the umpteenth time. Don't know how I got there. And a voice, but it wasn't a voice in my head. It was a voice from in here. It was more of an idea than a voice. And the voice says to me, look, Steve, go back to Long Island and do it their way. And I knew what that meant. So because of the way I looked, at that time, I was probably pushing about 220, hair down to here, great big hair all over my face. I looked like what I was, a drunk and a gangster. But I start the journey home. And I don't remember getting any rides or anything, but I do know it's a long walk from Boston to New York, I can tell you that. And I get back to New York and I must have asked myself at least 1,000 times, are you going to do this? Why are you kidding yourself? You're not going to do this. Who are you kidding? Are you going to do this? No, I'm not going to do this. So I get to the meeting. It was a Monday night. And the guy that had tried to 12-step me years earlier, he was still there. I remembered his name, Eddie. He says, "Are you back?" I said, yeah, I'm back. And he says to me, Steve, you're never going to get this if you don't get a sponsor. You don't know how to do this. You need somebody to show you how to do this. And I had, by the time I got here, tremendous trust issues. So he says to me, look, there's got to be one person in this room that you trust. Just one. Not everybody, one. So I'm looking around. I point across the room. I said, yeah, that guy over there. He said, well, you better go talk to him. So I do. I walk up to him. And I start shuffling and mumbling and stumbling, talking to Eddie over there. He says, I need a sponsor. He says, yeah, you probably do. I've been having trouble with the drink stuff. He says, yeah, I've noticed. And I keep shuffling and bumbling around like this until finally he says to me, hey, Hobo, are you asking me to be your sponsor? And now I thought he just set me up because I'm going to say yes. He's going to say no. And I'm going to get really angry. But I said, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm asking you to be my sponsor. So then he says to me, what are you willing to do to get sober? I said, I don't know, I guess whatever I got to do. And he says, really? I said, yeah, really. So he said, well, let's find out. He said, today is Monday. We meet here again in this room on Thursday. When you come back on Thursday, lose the hair, get rid of the hair on the face, get rid of those gangster clothes, and take a shower, you stink. And with that, he walked away. So I'm standing there like Mickey the Dunce. Geez, what do I do now? So I went home. My parents had gotten me an apartment out on Long Island. Oh, this is an interesting story. You might like this one. They found out when I had panhandled my brother. They found out I was wandering around and living in the city down in the subway station. And my parents, they were both alive at the time. They came looking for me and they found me. And they said, come on, we're going to take you home. We're going to try to help you. So halfway home on the Long Island Expressway, my father announces to me that they're taking me out to Long Island, but I'm not going to live with them. I said, where am I going to live? He said, we got you an apartment. It's a one-room apartment, 2 towns away from where they live. We can keep an eye on you. So I get to this apartment, and the house was owned by this lady who was a retired nun. And she had left the convent because back in those days, nuns didn't get paid. And her mother became ill and she had a lot of financial responsibility. So Mary had to quit the convent and become a public school teacher. So now I'm living there with Mary. And there were 2 other tenants in the apartment as well. But they were only there for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, I couldn't tolerate them, so I sent them on their way. And this is when I really crashed alcoholically. This is where I went into the DTs. And this is where I was having auditory hallucinations. But they were as real as to me as you people are on this screen right now. There were these big football-sized, ugly, slimy things that invaded the room and they'd want to crawl on me. And that wasn't too bad because I had lived in the kitchen too long to have something like that bother me. But it was a very sparse little room. There was a bed. There was a little place where I could keep milk or food, but I didn't put anything in there. And I had a table, a little card table, you know, 4x4, 3x3, whatever they are, card table. And there was a little radio on there. So I'm going through the DTs and I come home one night and I'm coming off a rip. And I'm really tired. And I'm trying to go to sleep. And there's a radio show on there. And they're not playing music, they talk. It's a panel show. And every once in a while, I would hear my name. They're talking about me. Like, oh, no, this is no good. So I get up and I pull the plug out of the wall. I go back to bed, and the radio show continues. And now they're chuckling. And then every once in a while, I would hear my name again. So I get up again and I take the radio, and at my 220 pounds at the time, I put it on the floor and I start jumping up and down on the radio. At 2, 3, 4 in the morning, whatever it was, Mary comes running up the stairs, opens the door, and she says, "Mr. Crazy, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, Mary, these people on the radio were talking about me. And I'm just trying to get them to stop because I really need some sleep." "Go to sleep. You're drunk." So I do. I go to sleep. Now the radio's down there on the floor. It's in 1,000 pieces. I go out the next day. I get my load on. I come home somewhere in the afternoon. Go to sleep. The damn radio starts the same show again. So now I get up and I'm jumping up and down on the bigger pieces. When Mary comes up and says, "Look, there is something really, really wrong with you." And she said, "We're going on a road trip tomorrow." I said, "Where are we going tomorrow?" She said, "Well, I know this priest up in the Bronx, and he has spent 45 years in Africa. He has done more exorcisms than any Catholic priest in the history of the church. And you're going to see him." And as soon as she said it, I felt better. I said, "This is it. This is what's wrong with me. I'm not crazy. I'm possessed. And this guy can fix me." So the next day, bright and early, we go up to the Bronx, and he's a very old man, very frail, very tall. And he's wearing one of those Jacques Cousteau watch caps, Navy watch caps. And he says to Mary, you sit down over here. Him and I are going to go over there in the other room and chat." So we go in the other room. He tells me to sit down. Then he takes a chair and he brings it over so that where knees are touching each other. I'm starting to get squirrely. Then he puts his hand out, and I know what he wants when he puts his hand out. He wants me to put my hand in. So I do. Then he puts his other hand on top of my hand. Now I'm really starting to sweat. And I don't know how long he's sitting there looking down at the floor, holding my hand, when finally he looks up and he says, "There are no demons here, just a very troubled young man." And I wanted to just die. I thought this was the answer. I was going to get well. So I went back to AA. I picked up with Ray. He told me to get a haircut, get a shave, get new clothes. So I borrowed $20 from my mother. And on Tuesday, the first thing I do is I go and I get a haircut. I say, "Get rid of all the hair." Fine. I came out of the barber shop, and I walked a couple of towns away to the Salvation Army, where I bought an entirely new wardrobe for $8. Shirt, pants, sneakers that matched. I looked like $1 million. And I went back to him on Thursday. He looked me up and down. He said, "All right, here's where we start." So the first thing he says to me is, "Look, I want you to understand something. I want you to envision that we're on a lake, And there's a canoe right there. You and I are going to get in the canoe and we're going to row to the other side of the lake. You're going to get an oar and I'm going to have an oar. If you drop your oar, I'm dropping mine. Huh? I understood what that meant. So the journey began. And I assured him that this was never going to work for me. Whereupon he said to me, listen, if you do exactly what I tell you to do, you are going to get sober. So in my conniving mind, I'm thinking, wait a minute, this could work to my advantage. So I made the decision right then and there. I'm going to do whatever he tells me to do, because when it doesn't work, I can point to him and say, it's his fault. I did everything he told me to do. And I spent the next 26 years with that man, never picking up another drink again. And he took me through these steps, not the way they take you through the steps today, very slowly. But what he insisted that I do from Jump Street was he did a lot of service work. Back then, service work is different than what it is today. You actually went to somebody's house at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, picked them up to a medical detox, poured them in there, and when he was done 5 days later, you picked them up, took them to a meeting, then you took them to the diner, and then you took them home. And that was 12-step work. And we did a lot of that. And I had the absolute pleasure of being with him and going through these steps one at a time. I could never move forward from one step to another until I could convince him, nobody else but him, that I was going to live the step when I walk out the door of Alcoholics Anonymous. Not memorize it. He didn't care if I knew what was on page 83. Am I going to live the step out there? So it was kind of a long process, but a very worthwhile process. And then I made it through all 12 steps. I continued on doing a lot of 12-step work. He used to volunteer me to do service work at other groups, even groups that I didn't go to. They needed a coffee maker up there at Babylon. You're gonna be their coffee maker for the next 6 months. Oh, geez, thanks. And that's how it went. And then he got very sick, and he went to the hospital. And I woke up in the middle, another gift from God. God's been with me. I'm telling you, I look back on my life now and I see God everywhere, everywhere. When I was drinking, I couldn't hear him, couldn't see him. But he was in the hospital, and I wake up in the middle of the night and I go, I got to go up there. Well, it's the middle of the night. It's not visiting hours. And then the other voice said to me, Steve, how many places did you break into when you were a criminal? Geez, for Christ's sake, you can't break into a hospital? So I did. I went up to the hospital. And there I knelt at the side of his bed and we prayed together. And after a while, he just lay back and he died. He died and I cried because I knew what I just lost. And it would never be able to be replaced. But I could carry on his legacy by continuing to do all of those things he taught me to do. He said to me in the very beginning, look, first I'm going to sober you up, and then I'm going to teach you how to grow up. And that's what happened. Today, I'm not a drunk and a criminal. I'm an honest, caring man, loved by many. Do I deserve it? I don't know. But that's my condition today. thanks to God, AA, and Ray Kessler. So I don't know if there's anybody on here that's new tonight, but if you are, the strongest suggestion I ever make to anybody that's brand new in AA, get a sponsor. Take the journey. And life has been really good to me. I mean, I ultimately had to get divorced from that first wife. Why she stayed for 19 years, I'll never know. And then I was alone for a very, very long time. Nobody else come into my life. And then at the age of 70, I got married again to the little Jewish mother I never had. And we're happy. We don't fight with each other. We respect each other. We love each other. I have children that love me. I have grandchildren that love me. Life has been very good. And I find myself in a rather unique predicament these days because at 79, I'm not well. And I go to a lot of meetings. I still go to a lot of meetings. But I am one of the true fortunates. I am not afraid to die. I'm not going to run out in traffic any day soon, but I am not afraid to die because I know I'm going home to a father who loves me. And I'll wrap with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Very, very moving. Very, very moving. You know, I know I'm blessed that you agreed to speak tonight, and I'm pretty sure that the heads and things I've seen nodding on Hollywood Squares are pleased that you were here tonight and pleased that they got on. So
it's a gift.
So this coming Saturday night, the 16th, Cody S. from Atlanta is our speaker. The following Saturday, the 23rd, Alex S. from Inglewood Cliffs, New Jersey. And the 30th is Cindy E.M. from Ottawa, Canada. And next Tuesday night, excuse me, that's the wrong one. That's May.
May, yeah.
Yeah, where am I looking here?
I don't know.
I don't either.
AA ought never be
There we go.
organized.
Next Tuesday night is Janelle F. from Brooklyn, New York. And the 26th is Gene H. from Dothan, Alabama. Well, those are our speakers for the Tuesdays and Saturday nights for the rest of the month. I want to say again that if there's anybody on here tonight that's feeling squirrely in any way, thinking of drinking, doing any dope, or doing something crazy or harming yourself, please stick around for the meeting after the meeting, and for God's sake, let us know what's going on. As I said, Steve's share was recorded. If you subscribe to the Pondables, you'll get it tomorrow. If you don't, put your email address in the chat when I open it up here in just a minute. And I was too busy listening to Steve to post how to subscribe to the Ponderable, but I will do that right now. So there's that. So guess that's about it. So I have asked Karen to read the promises. So Karen, if you'd please read the promises.
I sure will. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, Steve. You really touched my heart. Your message really touched my heart. I'm Karen. I'm an alcoholic, and these are the promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experiences can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Excuse me. Whoa. Thank you. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises?
We think not.
They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. Thank you, Stephen.
Work.
And Karen, and thanks to everybody who read. I realize I did not